You are now listening to Carlie's Couch.
I'm Carlie.
And I'm Lex.
In this podcast, we discuss a wide array of topics about life and how to live your best life,
whatever that looks like for you.
Hope y'all enjoy.
Often we hear, if they wanted to, they would. But would they? Is this a true statement, or does it not allow people the space to be human?
Hey y'all, happy Monday, happy day, whatever day it is.
Oh, happy day.
Oh, happy day.
Now, how you gonna start with the offbeat snap, though?
I didn't. I'm in the back.
You did.
No, I'm not. I was
all right,
down for the tenors. I was.
We'll run it back. We'll run back the tape. However, classic movie. Sister Act. Speaking of classic movies, Carlie Carpio beside me. I'm Lextopia, in case you didn't know. But they did go into Sister Act's a really good movie.
That is a great movie.
This week's question from the couch, before we get into the topic of our episode, is if you could live in the world of any movie for a day, which one would you pick and why?
So first off, we have B Priest with Tu Wong Fu, and thanks for everything.
People's critics said Black Panther because he'd want to be in Wakanda for a day, and I bet that could be inspiring.
I bet. We had two people say Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
I thought about it too.
That was a cool one.
It was a great movie. The only thing I thought about was like, dang, what if I'm on there on the day where it's like not a good meal? Because they couldn't choose.
You right in the head.
Yeah, they couldn't choose what happened with the weather. But still, it will be pretty cool.
They said because you can get food from the sky. And then the other person said, I was fascinated by the book as a child. And then it was made into a movie. All your meals falling from the sky seems crazy to me.
And it is. Candace says Secondhand Lions. Another movie I don't know.
Good movie.
What is it about?
It's like these two older guys, grandpas type thing, end up saving a kid from his parents. So think like James and the Giant Peach, like how wretched his aunties were. So that's like his parents were like that. So anyways, like he's related. They're like his great uncles or something. And the family's trying to get their money because they have supposedly found treasure and have like billions of dollars or whatever. Okay. But they live in this little farmhouse. Anyways, they like to have adventures. So they be flying planes and they own a lion.
Okay. I was waiting for like, what's the fun part of
this? And they have a whole bunch of money and then they really like love and take care of this kid and save him from a bad space.
Okay, cool.
It's a good movie. It made me cry at the end. The next one I feel like is a dud for everybody, at least millennials, but Blank Check. Shout out to Ace.
Which also made me think of Richie Rich, too, as I would say a close second to that. Another person said Jumanji. He said the adventure and chaos would be incredible, just got to survive the day, which makes that for me, but it did look cool.
I mean, it's not a bad way to go out, I guess, if you did happen to. Someone said Bridgerton, so shout out to my link. Then we had two people with Hogwarts / Harry Potter.
It was a little too much bullshit going on up in there. I'm sorry. Every year, bro. Like, nah.
All right, like, again?
Nah, I'm cool. Somebody else said Paint Your Wagon, a movie I do not know either.
And then Hook, so the Lost Boys, where the fake food was.
Yeah,
come on, Rufio.
Yeah, that was good.
That was the first Filipino person I ever saw on screen, so shout out to Rufio.
Oh, cool.
Brethren.
And then Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century, or it might be Zenon, because I don't know.
Xenon. I used to love that movie.
What
it's
is it? Some sci-fi?
It's a Disney movie. Yeah, but it's like her and Raven Simone were in it, and it was like their version of the 21st century, and they had
it's like a girly
My Supernova Girl. Yeah, but like it's like they're living on a space station, and it's just kind of cool, futuristic-y.
Okay. All right. Well, good movies. Some of those that I did not know, I will have to put on my list and see if I can find them for free on streaming. In which case, I'll let y'all know how they were.
Yep.
This week on the couch, we're talking about the phrase, if they wanted to, they would. Carlie, let's talk about this. What do you know, like, where did this come from? Why is this such a big thing?
I don't know where it came from, but I feel like, I mean, we're at the height of Instagrammable quotes for for relationships and life in general, and so people are always posting things, and I see it often, like a girl, just know if they wanted to, they would, and they always use other people's relationships. So actually I just had a homegirl who posted, she was like, I don't know what me and my fiance became the black love goal. She's like, but I actually really hate that shit. I wish I would stop using my shit for that. But it's like, you know, people were reposting her picture and her man getting engaged, talking about, well, if he wanted to, girl, he would.
Right.
And she's like, I don't even know
They don't know nothing about nothing. It's real. So I tried to do some research on like where it originated or where it was first said, and it was like we couldn't find anything, but just that it's a fairly modern phrase, and that essentially it just means like you're gonna make happen whatever you actually have a desire for. That being said, I think that part of why it's become so popular too is a little bit more focus on what we can get out of relationships, which I think is kind of like the core of most conversation around it at the end of the day. Whether it's like you should or shouldn't or whatever, it's about like making relationships worthwhile for you. But I think in a lot of cases, we center ourselves. And so we feel that we deserve XYZ, and we kind of cut out any other context that could exist in that case. Because I feel like in most relationships of people that you really know and can see, like maybe with your friend, for example, there's a lot more nuance to things. And like there's the ups, downs, the ins, outs, like everything, right? And there's growth, and then there's falling off and whatever. There's always like this idea that makes me feel like somebody will do everything that I want. They just need to like me enough. And that can stream into a whole bunch of other stuff.
I was about to say, and that in and of itself is very problematic.
Yeah. But what are your initial thoughts then with the statement?
I actually don't really like it. There's parts of it that I agree. Like, I think that if people love you, they show up in a way that's speaking of love. But that doesn't mean that they do everything you want them to do, that they do everything that you think that they should do. And I think that whenever we say if they wanted to, they would. Like, let's even take it out of relationships. Like, if your friend wanted to respond to that text message, they would. That's not true, because I have many a days where I would like to respond to a thing. I just don't have space, or I'm not in the right moment. And I feel like it actually forgets that we're human and that there's always so much going on in the world. And it leaves less space for grace, and it expects people to show up in a very transactional nature, like whatever you expect of them they have to do, or they don't want to. And I don't think that that's fair.
I actually disagree. I see that the phrase makes sense. I feel that in most cases, and maybe as we go through the episode we'll find a case that I have to run this back, but in most cases I feel like if I wanted to do something, I do it, and that people do things that they want to do. And that really what this turns into is the idea that maybe I need to acknowledge that I don't want to text you back. I don't want to do that right now. I don't want to, which is essentially kind of what you said. It's like, no, in that time you don't want to do that right now.
No, it's I want to, I don't have space. That's not the same thing. Saying that you want to, and that like maybe okay, so
do you not
if I'm
choose
driving,
what fills your space?
So if I'm driving, or if I'm busy with summer camp because I'm teaching 800 kids, no, I cannot. But that doesn't mean I don't want to, and I think that's where it gets like tricky. I don't like that. I don't like that reasoning. Like just because I don't in that moment, that doesn't mean I don't want to.
Also, I want to focus on the road, so I don't want to text you.
I also think that's semantics.
It doesn't exactly, but what I'm saying is that I think that it's true, and that it doesn't have to be a moral thing. So I'm not talking about right or wrong, but in that moment I do what I want to do. And I think that it might be more empowering to actually accept, like, I don't want to do that thing. That being said, when you look at it in relationships, I think there's a lot more context to it, to where I would not use this term against somebody in a way to say like, hey, you need to put me above anything. That's where I think talking about this and how it's really used a lot of times, then it gets tricky, because life is not about me, and life is not at my core. And yes, anything that you want to throw at me about, like, oh, I didn't do a thing, I didn't say a thing, I didn't whatever, blah, 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 probably because I didn't want to, or because I wanted to. What I did was what I wanted to do in that moment. And I think that it's empowering for me to stand on that. Like, I could apologize, or I could say, oh, okay, I can make different space for that later, or whatever. But like at the end of the day, I feel like I did what I wanted to do. And when I want to prioritize somebody, or when I want to do a thing, or want to watch a movie instead of do work, then that's what I maybe do. That might not be the best decision. So it's still not necessarily like a right or wrong. But we can get into it a little bit more. So that's my first thoughts about the statement, is like, I kind of wanted to, what you said, like, go against it, but I was like, at the end of the day, actually, I do kind of agree with it. I just don't think we have to put people in prison for feeling that about themselves. Maybe that's the difference. I'm reflecting it for myself and not other people doing for me.
Yeah, and I also think that whenever it becomes like make or break in relationship, like that's when it becomes like a problematic, because I do agree, like if people want to do something, then they will. Like that in general, it sounds like a cool basket statement, but I do think that it leaves off like humanity in people. And so I think that's like, for me, like where it gets complex, but
which is what we're about to go into now, because there are real life applications. So that's why I like in instances like this where we can have kind of two different approaches to it, but really, to your point, thinking about it as semantics or thinking about it as in what's the context of what are we really saying, it's not just that this quote is like, yes, no, it's about like how is it being applied. And so with that, there are complexities to it. So let's talk about like complexities of just even human behavior and motivation. One of which you've spoken about a lot is the hierarchy of needs. So like maybe you needed space. Maybe, you know, I'm drained right now to do a thing. Like there's so many things that can be happening with people that affect how they make their decisions or why.
And if you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, you're probably not showing up as your best self, and you should probably work on that first before you choose to show up and maybe mess up a situation and not be in your best space.
A big thing too with the hierarchy of needs, when your money's not up, like I don't feel like having no back and forth conversation. I'm sorry, like and maybe again, there's actually times where I have had my money low and I was like super feeling great, but that's because there's other things. Which the biggest thing. Holler at me on the side if you want to get caught up on this. But that gut health, like the moment I take this certain supplement I have and they're doing certain not hobbies, but certain things in my routine, no matter what's going on around me, like I've been like, oh, I feel like in a pretty good mood. And yet, going back to that hierarchy of needs, when you're in need or when you have a lot of stress in your life or whatever, you know, people aren't always going to be there for you the way you think. To put that blanket statement, like you said, like, oh, well, if you wanted to, you would. And it's like, I hear you, but like, actually, I don't, because I'm focused on the other stuff. And also, that's not good to put that on me because you're not acknowledging that I have a lot of stuff maybe going on. Are you familiar with intrinsic and extrinsic motivation?
Yeah,
I was looking that up earlier.
I was about to say, yeah, but let's run through it.
Okay, so another like a related concept, it's called intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. If you're intrinsically motivated, you're more likely to pursue something because I genuinely care. I find it meaningful. A lot of times, like
I'm very intrinsically motivated.
So like if it's, you know, you really care about how I am, so you're like, oh, how you doing? And might walk towards me while you talk. I'd be walking away as I talk to people, which is not good. But like I gotta figure that out. But if you're extrinsically motivated, so you can get the juxtaposition, that's when it's contingent upon pressures. So maybe like, oh, I feel like I need to do a thing, or rewards, like, okay, I know she gonna. My girlfriend's gonna treat me better if I do this or that, which might, you know, you might still get what you want. And if I wanted to, I would, but maybe that's because they know, like, all right, this is gonna make for peace in my life, da. And does that mean it's any better or worse depending on if the different motivations there, you know, if they're doing an action? I don't know, but
I think the only place where we get like better, worse, or right or wrong is if it's like manipulation, like anything like that. Like, you know, if you breadcrumb somebody along, they go. If you just do just enough, then I feel like that's problematic. But the other stuff, like, you just gotta think about how you make decisions and when, like, why you do stuff, and it's easy to kind of like look at like, oh, huh.
It's also important to think about empathy and having that kind of an understanding as well on why people do and don't do things. There's going back to kind of the first point we had there. It's a lot of people who, like, I didn't realize till later, like, so much stuff that was maybe going on, or people don't know, right? You might be having an interaction with somebody via email or a call or meeting or whatever it might be, and things feel weird, and you have to have a level of empathy. And I think this statement, I will say that, and this sounds like, correct me if it's not, kind of what you were alluding to earlier, that the way I'm looking at, if they wanted to, thank you, they would, it kind of strips like the empathy of it, because it's like, okay, if they wanted to, they would, end of story. There's no empathy for the part where I'm like, yeah, I didn't want to do that right now, but have empathy on the whole, you know, the whole situation. So yeah, that looks harsh, for sure.
Yeah, and just thinking about, like, I think there's empathy to a degree, right? So, like, you know, if somebody wanted to, like, be in a relationship with you, they would. And I think that that's a good statement to say, because then they would. But if they don't want to be in a relationship, then they're not. And they can make up whatever they want to say about it. But if they really wanted to become official or do that thing, then they would. And that just is what it is. Like, I don't really think that's cut and dry. That's very nuanced. But, like, you know, if people want to be there for you or actually want to show up and support you at a thing, but then they feel really anxious or depressed or something's going on, like, we really have to think about, like, and apply those things for people that we care about in our lives, because when you're so cut and dry to where it's black and white, like if they wanted to, they would, and then they don't do a thing, then I feel like you'll lose a lot of people in your life.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we talked about expectations a little bit last week. Maybe that fits in here a little bit as well, because what if what you're saying is the want to do thing is something different? So it might not be, my friend, if she wanted to talk to me, she would always pick up the phone. It might not be that. It might be, well, if she wanted to be my friend, she would be there for me in the capacity, in the way that she can. Or like we have an expectation of, like, how certain people are. And again, like we said with last week, you accept that and you move accordingly. And or if you do have an issue, sure, like you can maybe stop calling them. I've had that with people where it's like we're friends, but we have very different ideas of what friends are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's fine. I also like, I'm not about to call you every day, like, and be the only person doing the most. And it's like, when we talk and it's cool. And, we're cool. And you let it be on the level that it is. A personal story for me, what was this? Maybe, had to be probably like 2018, maybe 17 or 18. And going back to a relationship where, man, I was so... And, when it's stuff like this, it's usually been happening on, off, all kind of issue stuff, whatever. It was crazy and chaotic, so I already know that. I don't need to know all that. Anyway, I was at a point, and I just felt so upset. I was so upset. I was so sad. I was like, where's this person at? Like, I haven't heard from them. They're not answering anything. And it's like a week. And I was like, what's going on? And then don't get started on, like, you see the tweet or something go out, and it's like, okay, like, what's going on? And I remember, like, really lashing out when at some point, I don't know if I texted them or if I tried to call them and got them or whatever, but I remember lashing out, and it made me feel so bad, because I swear to God, and I don't know if it was even true or not, but knowing his life, it probably was, but it was like, he kind of snapped on me. He's like, you don't know what's going on this week. Like, my brother just got sent to jail, and my mom, something happened, and it was literally like the craziest list of stuff. And it was like, my kid broke their arm. Like, it was a bunch of stuff. Or he broke his something. Anyway, I ain't gonna hold you. So now let's dissect this both ways. Mm-hmm. Because, like, okay, you can let me know. You can say something to, hey, I don't got to, something's going on, right? That's where, in my mind, yes, it's true. If you wanted to communicate or have a good communication, then you would. And there's always time, right? That's why it's so hard for me to say, like, this is not true or not a valid point, because I can't ever think of a time. If something happened to me, the first person I might have texted and let them know would have been that person, right? Mm-hmm. Again, it was a zillion things that popped off, but it's still, I think there's a little space for that. And I always think about that on my side. Like, okay, anytime I felt like that, I didn't like the person, or the person was not that important to me. And so that's why I'm saying, like, let's be real about this, actually not that important. And that's okay, because I would never not let somebody that I'm, that's like supposed to be the kind of top of my list, like, know what's going on. Maybe a friend at that time, if I have somebody who keeps hitting me about hanging out or something, I might completely ignore that. And that's where that's different.
But then, yes. So, yes, I agree 100%. But then I have questions, because I've been in similar situations. Mm-hmm. I actually have a story that went the opposite way. Person I was dating didn't hit me. We were, like, just fresh dating. And it didn't hit me for a few days. And I was like, feeling the type of way. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to try something new. Mm-hmm. I'm going to chill. Mm-hmm. I'm going to relax. I'm going to let them hit me when they hit me. Hit me. Wild shit had happened that week. Mm-hmm. And they were so kind and grateful and gracious, the fact that I didn't go off on them. And they apologize and all those things. Mm-hmm.
That's happened to me too with the same person though. So like, also, I try to give it a learning experience. Like, okay, but and that also happened. So I would learn that, all right, some people deal with things by like completely shutting down. And so if there was a shutdown, I'm gonna let it breathe for a minute, and then it come back around.
And then they come back, but then that's part of that conversation, right? And I think that's where this quote gets people fucked up, because in that sense, like, yes, a simple text would have alleviated the whole situation. And they can be more thoughtful. And also, like,
live my life.
Yes. And also, give people grace to the extent that it doesn't cross your boundaries, or to the extent that it doesn't hurt you, or all of those things. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, and because now in this situation, same person, I was like, hey, I actually don't like that when you don't talk to me, when you completely shut down. If we fight, if we get mad, like, take your time. You avoid it, do what you do, but come back. Tell me you're gonna come back. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's have a conversation, and you have to be able to assert yourself. But I think that whenever we just make blanket ass statements, like if they wanted to, they would. We're not considering a whole person. And also the fact that in relationships, I think it disparages the fact that people are not going to disappoint you, because they are. And sorry to tell you, people can love you with their whole heart and still let you down, and still upset you, still piss you off, still get on your nerves. And so we're human, and so there's no human aspect in that. And so if you are using it, like, yes, I think there are very basic things. I think a lot of people skate around this and be doing fucked up stuff, you know what I'm saying, and they'll get theirs off GP, whatever. But like, in certain situations with people that you really care about, you have to think about that whole person.
I agree with everything you just said, and I think that's very important and very well stated. It does take the humanity out to have a blanket statement like that. And I think it's a good practice for us to always think about both sides of it. I know I've been on both sides. It's so funny that the one guy who like was always doing he's the most just like hard to wrangle in. And with a lot of other people, that's how I am. Like, I'm literally, I'm not answering nothing. If I don't feel like answering, I'd be mad when I do answer. It's like, dang, and everybody answers all of a sudden immediately. And it's like, but also it's a recognition of, that's a reflection of what I'm going through. There's a reflection of mental whatever. I can be totally present in a different space. And so I still have to acknowledge my space. And I would hope that people around me can give me, to that point, that grace. And so understanding it from both sides, it's like a yes. And I know that based on whatever relationships it might be, because also let's not get it twisted. People using this for people they just went on a first date with last week. Let's keep it real. This ain't that.
Nah.
Even with the example I gave, that's not my husband. Like, we not in the same house. It's different when it's like, oh, you ain't heard from your husband, or he dipped out.
Yeah, that's wild.
You know, or something like that. Like, at this point, we made a vow, and like, we need to communicate a little bit, even if it's like hey, I got to go to the back for a day. You know, something, right? I think there's different levels. So again, I think there's different levels based on relationship. But like this, if they wanted to, they would. It's like, sis, he just met you. He don't care enough. Like, let people care enough to want to.
Please.
And so I think all of those things that you kind of just said is very important, because we need to kind of back up and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, and I was about to say, like, I'm the person that my phone stay on Do Not Disturb. Call me twice if you need me.
Yeah, it does. That be pissing me off.
Sorry, bro. Sorry.
Because I don't even be talking that much, but when I say something, sometimes when I do say something, I'll be like, all right, I kind of need to know right now, like, what's going on? Like, notify.
Like, exclamation point, please notify now. But also, like, I went to my friend's birthday party, and she was like, oh my God, I know you were going to show up. She was like, she pointed at one of her friends and was like, yo, they show up to everything. She pointed at me, she said, Carlie shows up whenever it's right in her spirit. And I said, I'm so glad that you know that and appreciate that about me. But I've never lied or said I was anything else. This is how I am.
That has been communicated.
Yes,
expectations
you know
are
what's
set.
Good.
Expectations are set. If you don't love me anymore, you don't want to see me no more, don't invite me, and we cool.
And we out.
No love lost, baby. Look, let them. So how do we find balance and like apply this practically? I feel like we've been getting into all of this, but one of the biggest things, we have to balance expectations of others, and while also giving them the space. So the biggest part in this is those expectations. If they wanted to, they would. It kind of acts like I expect a no matter what, to the points that you were saying. And I think that I think a person who has their expectations in order would not be saying that. That's maybe really what I'm trying to say. So again, it's like I could break down the semantics of this or that. And also, I'm not out here saying that like that, because it feels like you're alluding to the fact that you have this really high expectation and like everything should be catered to, and that's not necessarily true. So get your expectations in line.
I say, because life is going to get you all the way together with that.
You're going to need your time of just falling off sometime. Like, yeah, you got to get that straight.
And then just the importance of like communicating with people. So it's like once you have these expectations, communicating, allowing them to then communicate back, and this being a thing that we agree upon in the center. But also recognizing the way you're looking at situations. So if it's first date, like we said, like be real, dog, with yourself, like, and everything that's going on, positively and negatively. Like, be able to look at all the situations and be outside of yourself and be real with yourself, because I think that that's a big deal too. You be putting expectations or things on people that like are not fair on them.
Yeah. So reflect on how you come into the table with certain stuff, and think about yourself. Lastly, what are some tips on how to approach situations with a little more flexibility and understanding? I like what you said earlier about, you know, in some cases, you know, let things go. Like, let it have time. Again, the Mel Robbins, like, all right, I'm not hearing from you. I'm a chill. And or I'm not mad at a
hey, are you okay?
at a double text or like a
yeah,
hey, just checking in with you. And then it's like, all right, now if you don't respond to the check-in, then it's like, I'm gonna let you breathe. But what are some tips on how we can do this better and navigate that?
So letting go, that's one. Two is communicating like with them. If you're unsure about something, if you're worried, if whatever, and I'm not talking about calling them 12 times in a row and leaving 10 voice notes, but checking in. Please don't do that, but don't be that person. And don't be mad if they tweet in and not texting you, because like it might be a little different.
That's tough. That's me on both sides too.
I know, but it's hard, right? I'm not saying I got any of this.
It's easy to understand things when it's you, and it's not as easy when it's against you.
But I'll also say like sometimes, because someone one time was like, "Oh, I just saw you posting on this," and I'm like, "Bro, that was scheduled. Like, get off my phone."
Straight up, it's apps out here for that.
Phone. Like,
I think that was scheduled 2 weeks ago,
yeah,
dog.
Can you like no for real? And it was a work thing, and she was like, "Oh my," because I wasn't replying to something, and I was like, "Dog,
I know you was hot.
I was hot,
you
boy.
Can't wait to put the Joker down. Like
I was ready. I sure was.
Don't ask me that again.
Yeah.
Wow.
Flip the table.
That's real. That's real.
It's like, and then also focusing on your freaking self, guys. Yeah. Sorry, but like anytime. And I hate that it ends here. Feel more free. But yeah, go to the gym. Go take that run. Go eat that good meal. Go hang out with your friends. Go get some sunshine. Touch some grass. Breathe. Meditate.
Chill. It's all right.
Stretch, shake, let it go. Do all that stuff. Just focus on yourself, and then things will find you. And if they don't, then you can move accordingly. If people do not, however they show up, you can move accordingly. You have free will. You are not a tree. You can move.
Yes. Posting online a lot of times it's one-way communication also. Like the stresses of communicating sometimes come with like needing to have a little bit extra energy sometimes to process and to communicate effectively. Yeah. And me being like a glizzy, like that didn't take no mental space. And you know, like sometimes too, like when a person can when you're in veg out times, like there's times where you know, it's an era of like I'm lounging out on the sofa, like sure I'm here, I'm doing something. I just want to veg out, like so. Sure, I would say to add lastly to what you had said is that have those expectations, watch them, and with interpersonal experiences, try to take the moment to hop into the person's shoes. Because when you think about it like that, especially when it's something like, oh, they didn't answer me in 5 minutes or whatever, it's like, just think about yourself and how you would respond to somebody feeling like that about you.
And be curious. I think a lot of times we assume things about people. That's
really good.
And so just being curious and not assuming that you know anything. Just be open. It doesn't have to be negative, because then you'll notice, oh, damn, I always assume something negative. Why? That's a you thing. That ain't got shit to do with them.
And in how you communicate and respect them. Because if you're curious, I might say, hey, is everything okay? I haven't heard from you in a couple of days. As opposed to,
why you ain't replied to my message?
Have a good life. And now sometimes people need that, but that comes with different context, nuance. You know, you did the same thing 200 times. Like, I already knew what it was, but we was having fun. And it is what it is, and that's why we laugh about it now. Like, I still talk to this person. Like, we laugh about all of that mess, but it's an understanding of, like, who people are going to be, having empathy around what's going on, and also recognizing that you're not the center of the world. That being said, somebody who loves you, will care for you and will be curious about you. Yes, will want to show you those things. Will want to communicate. And that's great. So be a part of that process. Be open with that process. Let it take shape. Just be there for the flow and the journey. I want you to share your thoughts with us on your feelings around if they wanted to, they would. Comment everywhere where you see Carlie's Couch content, where you follow us. And then just let us know, like, if you got anything out of this too. I feel like it was a good conversation because it kind of, in some places it can go like, feel like we're contradicting here or there. And yet I think that's what's needed. And that's what we can't do when we post things like, if they wanted to, they would click on Twitter or on Instagram, right? We don't have all this nuance to the conversation. That's important to really understand. What are you really saying? What do you really think? Because it might not be just those words. It's really a lot more going on there. So discover that for yourself. Think about that. And I want to encourage you to have conversations like this as well, where you can dive deeper into these types of topics.
Bye,
Peace
y'all.
out.